Irwin Peter Russell, the 16th of September 1921, 22 January 2003, was a British poet, translator and critic. He spent the first half of his life, apart from war service, based in Kent in London, being the proprietor of a series of bookshops, editing the influential literary magazine Nine, and being part of the literary scene. Bankruptcy and divorce led to several years of travel which took him to Berlin, Venice, British Columbia and Iran, amongst other places. After the Iranian Revolution he settled permanently in Italy, where he spent the rest of his life. He lived in considerable financial hardship, and throughout all he lived a life dedicated to poetry. His work never became mainstream, but it is highly regarded in some circles. Biography: Russell was born in Bristol and educated at Malvern College. During World War II he served in the Royal Artillery as an intelligence officer in India and Burma. He left the army with the rank of major. After the war, he studied English at Queen Mary College, London. He left without taking a degree. In 1948 Russell set up an Ezra Pound Circle, which met once a fortnight in a London pub. Arthur V. Moore encouraged him, passing on advice from Pound. E.P. thinks you might do as he used a half a century ago. Arranged to be at a given eating place at a given hour each week. It must be cheap enough so anyone can afford it, and at a place where such a gathering would be made comfortable. That summer Russell went to Italy and met Olga Rudge at Siena, met Pound's friend John Drummond in Rome, and visited Rapallo where he met D. Page, who was staying in Pound's old flat, engaged in the arduous task of compiling the first selection of Pound's letters. In 1951 Russell married Marjorie Keeling Bloxham. Her brother-in-law was Albion Harman, son of the self-proclaimed King of Lundy, the largest island in the Bristol Channel. In the 1950s Russell often visited Lundy, and enjoyed bird-watching there. In 1949 Russell founded the literary magazine Nine, named after the Nine Muses, which in its 11 issues published many notable poets including George Barker, Basil Bunting, Roy Campbell, Ronald Duncan, Paul Aluard, William Empson, David Gascoigne, Robert Graves, Michael Hamburger. The following year he started the Pound Press. Russell published work by Pound's friends, An Examination of Ezra Pound, 1950, but also the first English translations of Mandelstam, Pasternak and Borges. Russell ran the Grosvenor Bookshop in Tunbridge Wells from 1951 to 1959. Both Nine and the Pound Press ceased operation in 1956. And later that year Russell met the young William Cookson and in 1958 introduced him to Christina and Czeslaw Bednarczyk of the Poets and Painters Press, and suggested that Cookson found his own journal, which was to be the long-running agenda. Russell introduced him to the works of Hugh MacDiarmid and Tom Scott. Cookson saw Agenda as in part a continuation of what Russell had done with Nine. In 1995 Agenda brought out one of its dedicated issues, a tribute to Peter Russell. In 1959 the Grosvenor Bookshop went out of business, and he opened the Gallery Bookshop in Soho, London. He finally went bankrupt in 1963, and with the collapse of his marriage, he moved to Berlin. In 1965 he relocated to Venice. He had rooms in the Campo della Bragola. In the mid-1970s he held a writing fellowship as poet-in-residence at the University of Victoria in British Columbia, where he met his second wife, Lana Sue Long, who was around 30 years his junior. Two daughters, Kathleen and Sarah, were born to the couple in 1975 and 1976. After leaving Canada, the family moved to Tehran. where Russell taught and studied at the Imperial Academy of Philosophy. Their third child, a son, Peter George, was born there in 1977. They remained in Iran until the 1979 revolution, when they returned to Italy, where they lived together under considerable financial hardship. In 1989, Lana returned with the three children to North America, settling in Jackpot, Nevada, and the couple divorced in the 1990s. Tuscany was Russell's home for the last 40 years of his life. In 1983 he moved into an old mill, La Turbina, in Piandisco, in the Valdarno near Arezzo. Life at the mill was rudimentary, and there was hardly any furniture, although there were thousands of books in a variety of languages, and a supply of whiskey and cigarettes. Russell essentially lived in the kitchen, the most habitable and only warm room of the house. From 1990 he began editing the Marginalia newsletter, which appeared alternately in English, odd-numbered issues, and Italian, even-numbered issues. In the early 1990s he began working with his son, now a teenager, on the translations in his bilingual collections of his poems. In April 2001, serious health problems associated with a gastric ulcer led to 3 months in hospital, followed by a further 3 months in a sanatorium for the elderly. Around this time he became effectively completely blind. Russell translated varied works from several European languages. He also worked in Persian and Arabic. He was the first English translator of Osip Mandelstam. His close friends included Kathleen Raine and Leonello Raberti. He was a cousin of Bertrand Russell. He died in the hospital at San Giovanni Valdarno, only 15 minutes or so by car from Piandisco. Work. Dana Gurria has described Russell as a poet of striking contradictions. He is an immensely learned writer with an anti-academic temperament, a modernist bewitched by classicism, a polyglot rooted in demotic English, an experimentalist in love with strict traditional forms, a natural democrat suspicious of the left, and a mystic committed to clarity. Quote, works. Poetry. Picnic to the Moon. The Fortune Press. London. 1944. Omens and Elegies. Hand and Flower Press. Aldington. 1951. Descent. Private edition. Tunbridge Wells. 1952. 3 Elegies of Quintilius. The Pound Press. Tunbridge Wells. 1954. Images of Desire. Gallery Bookshop. London. 1962. Dreamland and Drunkenness. Gallery Bookshop. London. 1963. Complaints to Circe. London. 1963. The Spirit and the Body. An Orphic Poem. Keepsake Press. London. 1963. Visions and Ruins. St. Albert's Press. Aylesford, Kent. 1964. Agamemnon in Hades. St. Albert's Press. Aylesford, Kent. 1965. The Golden Chain. Lyrical Poems 1964–1969. Private edition. Venice. 1970. Passages Légendaires. Enitharmon Press. London. 1971. The Elegies of Quintilius. Anvil Press. London. 1975 and 1996. Ephemeron. A Commonplace Book. An Epic Poem. Lafayette, Indiana, USA. 1977. Theories. Crescent Moon Press. Tehran, Iran. 1977. Act of Recognition. 4 Visionary Poems. Golgonooza Press. Ipswich. 1978. Malice Aforethought of the Tumor in the Brain. Epigrammata. University of Salzburg. 1981. Elemental Discourses. University of Salzburg. 1981. Africa, A Dream. Private edition. Venice. 1981. All for the Wolves. Selected Poems 1947 to 1975. Anvil Press Poetry. London. 1984 and Black Swan. Reading Ridge, Connecticut. 1984. Quintili Apocalypsios Fragmenta. Agenda Editions. London. 1986. Thierry Alta Lirish. Carlo Mancaso Editor. Rome. 1990. Metami Ipsaeus Noarai, or Intellectual Transformations. Agenda Editions. London. 1991. Prato Magno. 9 Poems. Private Bilingual Edition. Translated by Pierfranco Donovan and the author. Pian Disco. 1992. Reprinted 1994. The Pound Connection in some poems. Mainly uncollected or unpublished. Private Edition. Pian Disco. 1992. A Progress of the Soul. Un Progresso dell'Anima. 5 poems. Pian Disco. 1992. Private Edition. Reprinted in 1993 as a bilingual edition translated by Pierfranco Donovan and the author. La Poésie di Manuela. Private Bilingual Edition. Pian Disco. 1992. Fiddlesticks. Legnati per il fuoco. Quintili Apocalypsios Fragmenta. Private Bilingual Edition. Translated by Pierfranco Donovan and the author. Pian Disco. 1992. The Duller Olive. Early poems uncollected or previously unpublished 1942 to 1959. University of Salzburg. 1993. Nove Poemi, 9 longer poems. Private Bilingual Edition. Translated by Pierfranco Donovan and the author. Pian Disco. 1993. A False Start. London Poems 1959 to 1963. University of Salzburg. 1993. Du Poesie del Ritorno. 2 Poems of Return. Private Bilingual Edition. Translated by Pierfranco Donovan and the author. Pian Disco. 1993. 10 Days at Neumarkt. Private Edition. Pian Disco. 1993. Some Poems. Private Edition. Pian Disco. 1993. Sonnet. Private Edition. Pian Disco. 1993. Africa. Un Sogno, A Dream. Private Bilingual Edition. Translated by Peter George Russell and the author. Pian Disco. 1993. 50 Gedikte von Peter Russell. Zwei Sprache Josgarby. Deutsche Übungsungen von Charles Stunzi. Private Bilingual Edition. Pian Disco. 1994. Berlin Tegel 1964. Poems and Translations. University of Salzburg. 1994. My Wild Heart. Il mio cuore selvaggio. Private Bilingual Edition. Preface by Leonello Raberti. Translated by Pierfranco Donovan and the author. Pian Disco. 1994 to 1996. Venice Poems 1965. University of Salzburg. 1995. 3 Quests Recherche. Private Bilingual Edition. Translated by Peter George Russell and Leonello Raberti. Pian Disco. 1995. More for the Wolves. University of Salzburg. 1997. Omens and Elegies. Descent, Visions and Ruins. Agamemnon in Hades. University of Salzburg. 1997. From the Apocalypse of Quintilius, selected and introduced by Glenn Pursglove. University of Salzburg. 1997. Passages Legendaires and Acts of Recognition. University of Salzburg. 1997. Towards an Unknown Life, L.I. Sonnets. Bellowing Arc Press. Seattle, Washington, USA. 1997. Language and the Spirit in Age of Antichrist. Temenos Academy. London. 1997. My Wild Heart. University of Salzburg. 1998. La Catena d'Oro, The Golden Chain. Bilingual edition. Preface by Giuseppe Conte. Translated by Peter George Russell. Pier Franco Donovan and the author. Padia. Firenze. 1998. Sei poesie recenti, 6 recent poems. Edizioni de Filippese. Translated by Peter George Russell. Irezzo. 1998. Considerazioni sul fragmentum Filipponum 2993. Quintili Elegidiani Villa Intucius. Vitam Redadasses. Edizioni de Filippese. Irezzo. 1998. Poesie del Valdano, Poems. Bilingual edition. Translated by Peter George Russell. Pier Franco Donovan. Roberto Marchi and the author. Preface by Franco Loi. Pietro Chegai editor. Florence. 1999. Effetti di luce d'alta poesie, Effects of Light. Bilingual edition. Translated by Peter George Russell and the author. Edizioni Dialoga Libri. Como 1999. Sonnets, a provisional text January-August 1999. Private edition. Pian Disco. 1999. La Sorgente Prosciugata, The Dried Up Spring. Bilingual edition translated by Peter George Russell and the author. Edizioni Eva. Vendafro. Is. 2000. Sonetti, Settembre-Ottobre 1998 Al Fumo della Candela. Translated by Peter George Russell and the author. Salvatore Sciascia editor. Caltanissetta Rome. 2000. Albe Meditatio. Poemetto. Translated by the author and Pier Franco Donovan. Edizioni Nooltri. Messina. 2000. Sonetti, Autunno 1998. Private bilingual edition. Translated by Peter George Russell and the author. Pian Disco. 2000. Mettami ipseus noerai. O della trasformazione intellettuale. Mettami ipseus noerai. Or Intellectual Transformations. Translated by Roberto Marchi. La Bottega di Poesia Fernando Pessoa. Anno Ix. N. 42. November 2001. Sesto San Giovanni. Me. Scala l'Olimpo, Scaling Olympus. Bilingual edition. Preface by Brandicio Andolfi. Translated by Peter George Russell. Pier Franco Donovan and the author Pietro Chegai editor. Florence. 2001. A Savannah da Nonno Peter. Translated by Peter George Russell. Joseph Canzio and the author. Edizioni de Filippese. Irezzo. 2001. Autumn to Autumn. Sonetti 1997-1998. Bilingual edition. Preface by Enrica Salvaneschi. Translated by Peter George Russell and the author. Edizioni Il Foglio. Piombino. 2002. Long Evening Shadows. La Lunga Ombra della Sera. 16 Poesie Trade da Franco-Alimo. Edizioni Il Foglio. Piombino. 2002. Living Death, Vivere la Morte. Bilingual edition. Preface and translation by Franco-Alimo. Padia. Florence. 2002. This Is Not My Hour. Studio e Traduzione di Sonnets. Bilingual edition. Translation by Raffaello Bisso. Edizioni del Foglio Clandestino. Sesto San Giovanni. Me. 2010. Prose. Preliminary notes on the political and economic ideas of Ezra Pound. Private edition. London. 1948. Elements or Ingredients of Poetry and Imagination. 2 Addresses on Poetry. Private edition. Pian Disco. 1991. Ezra Pound and the Cantos lecture given at the British Council. Naples. Edition Private Pian Disco. 1991. Vision in the Poetry of Ezra Pound or Ezra Pound and the Invisible. Private edition. Pian Disco. 1991. Ezra Pound. Great Poet. Great Friend. Conference held at the Petrarch Academy of Arezzo, 20 March 1991. Private edition. Piandisco, 1991. Dante and Islam. Private edition. Terra Nuova Bracciolini. 1991. 5 Addresses on Poetry. Private edition. Piandisco. 1991. Tolkien and the Imagination. Private edition. Piandisco. 1991. Kosovo like cosmic symbol, a speech given in occasion of the encounter of October of the Union of the Writers of the Republic of Serbia. Belgrade, 1989. Private edition. Piandisco. 1991. The Image of Woman as a Figure of the Spirit. 4 lectures given at the Carl Gustav Jung Institute. Zurigo. 1991. Private edition. Piandisco. 1991. Then published in editions of the University of Salzburg. 1992. Celestial Assumption. 4 Conferences on Dante and Islam. Private edition. Piandisco. 1992. Dante and Islam, A General Introduction. 4 Conferences held in 1991. Private edition. Piandisco. 1992. Poetic Asides I. University of Salzburg. 1992. Quietly Apocalypsios Fragmenta. Introduction. Private edition. Piandisco. 1992. Poetry and Meaning. Preamble to a selection of lyrical poems for the Fries Gymnasium. Basel. October 1990. Private edition. Piandisco. 1992. Vitalism or Abdication. Private edition. Piandisco. 1992. The Exile, from the United Kingdom. First Dantesque International Conference. 9–10 October 1992. Poppy. Arezzo. From the title It, in the track of Dante. The Exile and the Writers of the 1900s. Private edition. Piandisco. 1992. Campagna. Verde Campagna. Private edition. Piandisco. 1992. Avant propos ad una lettura della propria poesie. Private edition. Piandisco. 1992. In the Tradition, a British writer living in Italy, an address given to Sarah Lawrence University and Richmond College, Florence. March 1991. Private edition. Piandisco. 1992. New Poetry from Italy, a review of the anthology, New Italian Poets, edited by Dana Gioia and Michael Palm. Story Linens Press. Brownsville, USA. 1991. Private edition. Piandisco. 1992. Poetic Asides 2. University of Salzburg. 1993. 2 Notes on Cheo Greco. Private edition. Piandisco. 1993. Shelley, Plato and Thomas Taylor, a lecture given at the International Bicentenary Conference on Percy Bysshe Shelley at the University of Salzburg. September 2–October 1992. Private edition. Piandisco. 1993. La Visione Pavesian del Moby Dick di Melville Conference held in 1993 near the municipality of Terra Nuova Bracciolini. Private edition. Piandisco. 1994. Something About Poetry, Selected Lectures and Essays by Peter Russell, edited by Glenn Pursglove. University of Salzburg. 1997. Bibliography. Burns, Richard. The Poet Odyssified, a biographical essay. Burns, Richard. Obituary. The Independent. 28 January 2003. Carpenter, Humphrey. A Serious Character. The Life of Ezra Pound. Faber and Faber. 1988. ISBN 0-571-14786-0. Cookson, William. E. P. and Agenda. Autobiographical Fragments in Sons of Ezra. British Poets and Ezra Pound. Edited by Michael Alexander and James McGonigal. Rhodope. 1995. ISBN 90-5183-855-7. ISBN 978-90-5183-855-8. McIntyre, Dennis. Editor. International Who's Who in Poetry and Poets Encyclopedia International Biographical Center. Routledge. 2001. ISBN 0-948875-59-3. ISBN 978-0-948875-59-5. Pursglove, Glyn. Obituary. The Guardian. 15 April 2003. Pursglove, Glyn. Obituary in Acumen 46. May 2003. Peter Russell site. History of Agenda. Letter dated September 2001. Peter Russell Fonds at University of Victoria. Special Collections. 1. Peter Russell, site Sinope Art Italy.